community service organization platform. And because groups like yours have been, I feel like, targeted, and so, or they miss out on the same opportunities. Aside from the field access and whatnot, do you believe that your players, and I'm asking this because of some of the letters that came in from the parents, do you feel that some of the kids ask or have kind of a lower self-esteem or feel like they're not good enough because they aren't able to play on PV fields?
That's a great question. I can only speak to what people have told me, and I haven't talked to everybody in my whole organization about this specific question. And I would say I know there are some that think it's because I had one parent actually specifically tell me, my son talked to his friend that played on ASO United team. His son has a friend that plays on the Eagles team, and they asked him why he wasn't able to play on the fields at Pleasant Valley Fields, and because he was on one of our teams, and his answer was he didn't understand why, but he did ask his mom. He said, "Mom, is it because I'm not good enough to play on those fields?" So that was one of the actual responses. So now, do I think that everybody feels that way? Probably not, but that was just one person that told me recently that story, because they knew we were coming in here for this specific board meeting.
Sure, and just one kid if one person came forward, I'm sure that there are others, and I've just noticed by the public's reaction, a lot of nodding heads, and really that's unfortunate for any child to feel that way. I don't believe I have any other questions at this time, but just thank you so much for all of your involvement in the community.
Thank you.
Director Magner.
I have questions about hours. I think the application says 2,000, and you said no, you would only need 800. And you mentioned, 4 days or 4 hours for 3 days a week?
Oh, the reverse.
Oh, okay,
4
sorry.
days a week, 3
Okay,
hours, yeah.
okay.
If I misspoke, my apologies.
That's okay. It's still the same number of hours, so. What about games? Does that include games?
Yes, it did. It included games on the weekends, and I believe that we need a total average. It would be 6.5 games a weekend, but that wouldn't necessarily be every weekend because it depends on some weekends will be 2 games and other games may be a little bit more, and not all of our teams are on full-sided fields either. So a lot of our teams are on smaller-sided fields. So the way that the rentals are set up right now, especially for Pleasant Valley Fields, it's only a zone that you can rent, and we wouldn't necessarily need a whole zone every time. I'm not trying to get half that zone price or anything like that, but that's just what we would, we're just trying to come up with an average, reasonable estimate on what that would entail. So it did include games for our fall and spring seasons.
6.5 games?
Well, we had 13 teams, so
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I was like, okay, how are we gonna play a half game here?
I just gave
All
you
right.
the average, so if you
I
want to
mean,
round up, it'd be 7.
it has been 30-some years, so I may have missed something somewhere along the line, so. So, Mary, we only rent by the zone?
Try that again. Currently, that is correct. Lanny, do it by zone?
Zone or softball field.
Good clarification. On the softball field, we do it by softball field.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, Director Kelly, you have another question?
Yes, Brian,
In regard to the discussion that you had earlier with one of the other board members, specifically Director Dransville asked a question about children having a negative thought in their head because they think they're not good enough to play at PV Fields. That's where I'm at. Any one of those kids that you're talking about could play at AYSO, or if they were competitive or played on recreation style, could also play at one of those organizations, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
I think
Secondly,
I specifically referenced, though, that it was in reference to him because he was playing on my team. So I think I did clarify that.
yes, but there is an opportunity for the child to play at PV Fields. It just wouldn't be with you, right?
That's correct. I mean, there is other opportunities, but if they choose me, then there wouldn't be.
Exactly.
Okay.
I tell you what, let's stop the board questioning here. There's member of the public want to comment?
Okay.
Let's have the public comment, and we're going to get some more information to that, and then we can have some
Okay,
additional questions.
that's fine.
afterwards. Thank you, Mr. Monka. Okay, are there any other cards? Are there any other speaker cards on this item? Okay,
See a couple out there.
call the first one, Casey Wake.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Casey Wake, and I'm a psychologist, and I'm the director of a psychiatric facility in Ventura County, specializing in mental health. I also serve on a nonprofit community service organization that provides animal-assisted therapies to underserved members of our community. So it's very important to me in both my professional roles and my community service roles to give back to the community and also recognize where improvements should be made. That said, my most important role is mom to 3 young children, and I'm proud to share that I was born and raised here in Camarillo, and this is where my husband and I are raising our boys. All 3 of my children play for MSAFC. MSAFC provides an opportunity for the youth in our community to train and develop skills, build friendships and lasting memories, and learn important life lessons. MSAFC provides these opportunities for kids of all skill level, for players right here in our very own community. In fact, my oldest son, Cash, plays club soccer, the more competitive level, while my younger 2 are learning the basics of recreational at this time. We love that they can play with their school and neighborhood friends. When COVID hit and life changed, as mom, I was eager to keep my kids active, physically and mentally well. It was important that the kids in our community continue to have opportunity for safe and healthy outlets. MSAFC was able to meet the requirements, abide by the county's stipulated protocols, in order to provide the opportunities for my children and the kids in our community. This was incredibly important for their physical and mental well-being. And they did all this while using the one small field adjacent to a church that serves the MSAFC teams. Kudos. When we drive by the beautiful Pleasant Valley Fields to visit our great-grandma, my son's great-grandma, my children will ask why they aren't allowed to play on the PV fields. And the reality is, there is not a reasonable explanation for their exclusion. Becoming a CSO is the right fit for MSAFC, as they serve the recreational needs of the district and support so many of our local kids. Think about how many more kids could be provided an opportunity for a learning good soccer foundation, have a safe place to play, enjoy their friends, and develop as a player and person if MSAFC became a CSO and had access to the better fields. Let's do better. Let the decisions made be in the spirit of equity and inclusion. Let's model our decisions and actions for the youth in our community and allow all of our children to access our local community resources rather than just a select few. To conclude, I stand before you today as a lifelong Camarillo resident and mom of 3, an advocate for our kiddos in our community, to ask you to please consider approving MSAFC to be a CSO.
Thank you, Dr. Wake. Next speaker, Kristen Long.
Good evening, Board. Camarillo is an amazing place to raise our children. My family's been in Camarillo for 5 generations. My grandfather, Gene, was the first fire chief and town night watchman. My late father called home to the fire station on Ventura Boulevard. Director Dransveld's daughter is our 5th generation. Her father-in-law is my first cousin. We're Camarillo natives. We were educated in the PVSD schools. We played at the local parks, participated in baseball, AYSO, club soccer, tennis, Girl Scouts, Indian Guides, because they had the best pancake breakfasts, marched in the Christmas parade, swam in the former Freedom Pool, and at the Aquatic Center. We treated all the individuals in our families as community members. We supported all youth clubs, community projects, and lent our support to our neighbors. MSA Soccer has over 80% of its participants from Camarillo. My sons played soccer and MSA from recreational to competitive since age 4. My son Dylan's MSA 2010 team were the Bronze State Cup finalists in 2020, defeating over 120 teams. Dylan's teammates attend Los Primeros, Tierra Linda, La Mariposa, Cape, and Santa Rosa schools. They are first and foremost friends that love to compete and believe in equality. They support integrity and fairness to their community. What they don't get is access to the same playing fields. My family's tax dollars have supported those fields for decades, and all of the park facilities. MSA is a Camarillo-based small business run by Camarillo locals, serving Camarillo youth. MSA employs local residents and county, and we are not chasing tournaments out of state like the Eagles. Our parents are working individuals, from nurses and utility workers, doctors, salespeople, and local police. I see our coaches in local shops, and they address my boys by name. We tried AYSO. They didn't have professional coaches. They had no technical training. And my then 5-year-old's coach threw water bottles and screamed at his son. Not very professional. The purported professional coaches of the Eagles that run from Director Kelly's house demonstrate recruiting policies that I will not support. They practice, travel, and do things that our family will not support. First and foremost, Coach Brian trains my son. He demands responsibility. The boys clean up their fields, and they walk.
Thank you.
and
Thank
work
you.
to support
Your time's
their
up.
members.
Your time's up. Thank you. Next speaker, David Woodbury.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is David Woodbury. I'm a Camarillo resident. My wife and I have 4 children, ages 8 to 15. My wife also is not the president of the Eagles, but she is an AYSO coach and not the kind that throws bottles. She's excellent. I've been an ASO referee since 2014. My kids have all played AYSO and also MSAFC. A few weeks ago, my 8-year-old daughter's MSA team was lucky enough to play a game on Pleasant Valley Fields as the visiting team against the Eagles. They lost 10-0, and frankly, it could have been a lot worse. The Eagles were great, as many of the Eagles teams are. They were much more deserving of the win, but they were not more deserving to be on that field. MSAFC is what a community soccer club should be. Its membership is 85% Camarillo kids and diverse like the community. MSA's mission statement is to develop the whole person and not just elite players. MSA's barriers to entry in terms of cost and talent are lower to accommodate a wider group of candidate players. My kids couldn't make the Eagles. On merit, sorry kids, On merit, this should be an easy decision. But this board doesn't have a history of making these decisions based on merit. This board has constantly used CSO designation as a clear distinction between the haves and the have-nots. Every neighboring municipality, Ventura, Oxnard, Conejo Creek, allow at least 6 youth soccer clubs to access their publicly funded sports fields. We allow 1 and now 2 with competitive ASO United. Isn't it time to expand this vision? This district's practices with regard to sports field access erode public confidence in the board and the staff, create a perception of conflict of interest, fuel rumors of corruption, and invite inquiry, investigation, and litigation. We don't need any of that. Wouldn't it be nice to not have to fight this battle publicly forever? There's no question that these MSA teams deserve some level of access to Pleasant Valley Fields. 800 hours, 130 kids. And this is true even if it means a slight inconvenience to the current CSOs. Let's put aside the past, the grudges, the pettiness. We can do better. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jeanette Rosling. Is that, did I pronounce that right? Rosling, yeah. Rosling, okay.
Good evening. Thank you, board members. My name is Jeanette Rosling, and I am the new Regional Commissioner for AYSO Region 68. I want to share a quick overview of what we are doing here in Region 68 to bring world-class youth soccer programs that enriches our children's lives. We have been developing and delivering quality youth soccer programs which promote fun, family environment, based on our 6 philosophies for almost 50 years here in Camarillo. AYSO philosophies are the living tenets that separate us from other sports organizations. Everyone plays. Our program goals is for every kid to play a lot of soccer. We mandate that every player on every team must play at least 50% of every game. It's no fun to spend the game on the bench. That's not a way to learn to play soccer. Balanced teams. Every year, we form new teams as evenly balanced as possible because it's more fun and better learning experience when teams play similar ability play. It allows each player to gain experience of a wide variety of teammates of different skill levels. Open registration. Our program is open to all children between 4 and 19 years of age who want to play soccer. Interest and enthusiasm are their only criteria to play. There are no elimination tryouts. There's no cuts from our fall and core season programs. Positive coaching. Encouragement of a player's effort provides greater enjoyment for all the players. This leads to better skilled and better motivated players. A coach can be one of the most influential persons in a child's life. So AYSO requires that they create a positive experience for every child. Good sportsmanship. We strive to create a positive environment based on mutual respect rather than a win-at-all-costs attitude. Our program is designed to instill good sportsmanship into every facet of AYSO. Player development. We believe that all players should be able to develop their soccer skills and knowledge to the best of their abilities, both individually and as members of a team, in order to maximize their enjoyment of the game. Region 68 provides this full spectrum of soccer opportunities to every child here in our community. Currently, our fall core program registration has over 1,200 players and is still growing as we are still in registration, which will continue until June 11th. We have programs starting at age 4 through 19. We have adult leagues. We have competitive club teams. We have them through United and our extra programs. We also have our VIP program, which serves mentally and physically challenged players. Soccer is played year-round in Region 68. We hold a spring league. We support tournament, all-star, and club-level teams, as well as summer day camps. We host 2 successful tournaments every year to keep our local players' fees low. We discount to military families to foster children and families with multiple children, as well as offer scholarships.
Thank you very much. Your time's up.
Thank you very much.
Dan Johnston.
Good evening, Board, fellow community members. First, I wanted to speak that I'm not here to speak against any CSO. My family has played. I've managed teams in all the groups that are here tonight to represent soccer. So that's not really what I'm here to talk about. I wanted to give just some more background information. With the usage of the field, it's a fact today that we haven't used the fields in the same format we would have used in years past due to COVID. It's also a fact that in a normal year, AYSO uses the fields for 3,500 to 4,000 hours a year. And those hours are all represented by 90+% of our registrants being from the city of Camarillo. This includes practice, games, tournaments, but even with that, we have barely more than half of our players now that get to practice full-time at Pleasant Valley Field. We use several other community parks, including Kildee and other community parks, to accommodate the needs of just the players in our program. If we had more space, we would use more space to house and practice with that. We do play all of our games at Pleasant Valley Field. This usage is also located primarily on the lighted fields because that gives us a larger window of time, where we use approximately 4.5 hours of practice time during those weekdays. Space, it's a fact that we already can't do all of our activities there. There simply isn't enough space. On a given weekday, we utilize all the zones that we're available to use, and we have to alternate those zones based on the staff's usage determinants from Pleasant Valley Park staff. Those zones do appear to sit open, but they sit open based on recovery, rest, to make our fields the world-class fields that they are today. Pardon me. Parking. Parking is another space issue. On a given weeknight or a given weekend, I don't know how many community members have been out to Pleasant Valley Field or through tournaments, the parking lot is an absolute crunch. And that's with us spreading the games as much as we can. If we're adding more and more and more into that, people park farther and farther into the community, which we then hear about even more. With that said, 2020-21 has been a strange year with minimal use of the fields, but that's not normal. In fact, during this time, with that limited use, we've been asked by Park and Rec staff to limit our use, to limit our tournament days, to do away with area tournaments, all the extras that we do to raise funds for our members and for our communities to pay the lowest fees around for soccer, and so that we can continue that registration process. It doesn't make logical sense to add more hours, whether it be 800 or 2,000, into a structure that's already being asked to do less hours than we would have normally done, especially in a year when we were cut so low due to just community restrictions. That's actually good enough, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Richard Frank.
Chairman Malloy, Board. My name's Richard Frank. I'm a volunteer with ASO since about 1995. I've coached, reffed, and been a board member, and I'm currently the safety director for AYSO. With Pleasant Valley Fields, we have a couple major concerns. Specifically, the usage of the fields is pretty tight. As Dan mentioned, we keep getting moved around and everything to be able to keep the fields in as good a condition as we want. We've been working, AYSO has been working with the district for a very, very long time at all the facilities, but especially at Pleasant Valley Fields, to try and maintain and keep those fields in the condition that they need to be. Adding any more use is going to impact and possibly impact the fields to the point of no return. And we're headed into a drought year. As Dan mentioned, parking is a problem. We have the luxury of scheduling most of our own games so that they end and begin at different times, so everybody isn't coming and going to the parking lot at the same time. So while that doesn't sound like a big deal, unfortunately, club teams don't have that luxury. So when we start having more cars in a crowded parking lot, it makes a bad situation worse. Having said that, crowded parking lot, frustrated drivers, and lots of kids of all ages running around is not a good recipe for safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike Mishler.
Hi, good evening. Most of you guys all know me. I've done everything in ASO soccer for a very long time. I've held every job. I started up the first spring league season here in Ventura County at Region 68. I was a regional commissioner. I started up the adult league here when the Park District couldn't handle it, so I took over and did all that as a volunteer. So I have a long history with this. I was part of the team, the community team, who when this was Strawberry Fields out there, Village at the Park, who worked with the developer to expand from 30 acres to over 50 acres for the Pleasant Valley Fields. That was part of my work along with some other members. Basically, this is very simple. The community, the Park District will never have enough facilities for every single request. And so what the district has to do, the Park District has to do is, of course, is set what is the best for the entire community use. And tonight you've heard the comments from various people, and basically what they're talking about is what's called an open access policy. And basically this means that any local organization should have automatic access to every facility or whatever facility they want. And that's basically what they've been talking about. So let me give you an example of that. We have a girls softball program running out of Mission Oaks Park, okay, that serves the entire community. Under open access policy, what everybody here is proposing, that means anytime a local organization wants to set up another girls softball organization, they should get automatic access to Mission Oaks Field. We can end up with 4 or 5 different girls softball organizations all trying to fight each other over using one site, using that type of policy. That's why the district has never used that policy. That's why we try to work for the whole community. So back to PV Fields. And this limits this to soccer, not because we have football teams that don't have any fields. We have field hockey teams that don't have any place to play. But this, restricting it to soccer. Oh my gosh. So very quickly, if you do this, you're going to have, I've been contacted by multiple individuals who've told me point blank, if MSA gets access to these fields through this way, they're going to start up a local team. So next year, you're going to have multiple other organizations also applying. This is not a one-off. This is the first wave of many other teams. At least 5 or 6 people have told me that. So, and Steve Monka and Brian Monka agree with me. I have spent time talking with them one-on-one, and they agree with me that an open access policy is wrong. They do not support an open access policy. They understand this will destroy the PV fields. And very quickly, when you look at the numbers for the 800, if they do let them in just one time, that's basically a 10% increase usage total field, or for the total PV fields, or 11 to 12% for the soccer complex use. That's on top of the existing use, and that will destroy the fields. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mishler. That's all the public comment we have. Are there do any other board members have any questions?
I do have one more for Mr. Monka.
Which Mr. Monka?
Either one, whoever wants to answer the question. I know that, the CSO agreements are varied and not particularly consistent from what I've seen. If we're to consider, we're considering it at this time, what would you be willing to consider as far as an agreement if you were approved as a CSO, what would you see contributing? I understand it would vary based on field access, but one of the things I would think might be worth considering is that there's a whole section of the field that's not lighted, and I think that, you know, that section of the fields essentially becomes useless after dark because the lights aren't there. You know, obviously, everyone has their stake out there at Pleasant Valley Parks, at the fields, and if we're able to light those fields to be able to make them have more hours of utilization out there on the east side, is that something that you would consider partnering with the district with or paying for if, as part of your CSO agreement, if that's something that's approved?
Depending on the circumstances, it's something that we would consider.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Kelly, you have any more questions?
Yeah. Brian, how many coaches work at MSA right now?
At MSAFC, we have 8.
And are these coaches coaching the competitive teams or the recreational teams, or both?
They are coaching the competitive. That's the competitive teams that I'm referencing.
And I assume these coaches get a salary to coach the teams?
Some of them.
And of the coaches, you're one of them, I assume?
That's correct.
I see you at the soccer fields. And I believe your dad, Steve, is one of the coaches?
Yep, that's correct.
And your sister, Brianna, is one of the coaches?
Yes.
And then the rest are they're coaches that you have hired based on your knowledge of them, or they've applied or something like that?
That's correct.
Let's assume you were granted CSO status. Do you intend to grow your club any more than it is now?
I think I would be open to more growth if it was available, but as of right now, I have limited resources, so I can't necessarily grow the club. So it would depend on the situation, because I wouldn't want to put anybody in a situation where they're unsafe, but I would be open to growing it if the opportunity was there.
This is kind of a touchy question, but I have to ask it. Do any of the board members for MSA get paid to be board members?
To be board members,
Yes.
I don't know if that would be what their classification of pay is.
Well, then let's just broaden it a little bit.
Okay.
Do they get paid?
One person does get paid that's on the board.
And that's your dad, Steve?
That's correct. Similar to other organizations.
What organizations are you familiar with that do that?
The Eagles.
The Eagles? Who do you think gets paid at the Eagles?
You can read on their nonprofit status who gets paid.
I'm not sure who you're referring to.
Well, the vice president gets paid, Robert Drescher.
And you believe that he gets paid to sit on the board?
Not sit on the board, but that wasn't the question. You clarified it, that you said if they get paid. So originally the question was if they get paid to sit on the board. But the question later came and I said, I don't know if they get paid to sit on the board because I'm not on the board. So the question then became, you broadened it and you said, do they get paid? And I answered yes.
Well, I assume in your organization, people who do field things, equipment things, get paid a certain amount of money?
That's correct.
Okay. And that's normal at most club soccer programs, right?
I think it would be the norm.
Yes. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else with any questions?
Just add one more. With regards to field access, know that the hours have been stretched, as has been seen in the report, and clearly we don't want to do anything that's going to undermine the quality of the fields. And essentially, would you be willing to consider a CSO application if your hours, if you had to practice certain hours at a different park that's designated by the district, as well as partially at Pleasant Valley Fields, in addition to being able to play your games at Pleasant Valley Fields? Because looking through some of the hour usages in these reports, different organizations practice at different fields and utilize a variety of fields and space, but still are able to play their games at Pleasant Valley Fields for the items that matter, as well as practice at Cape School, and which isn't ours, particularly the district, but whether it's Cape School or whether it's one of the local community schools like Wood Creek, is that something that you'd be open to as well if the district wasn't able to accommodate all the hours of practice at Pleasant Valley Fields? Maybe it's a portion of what's requested for. Is that something that you'd be open to?
Sure.
That's the last question I have. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions for Brian? Okay. I have some questions for Steve. So, Steve, would you come on up? I'm the finance guy here, so I always want to look at the numbers. Do you have your financial statement that you submitted? Do you have a copy of it handy? I was sort of expecting it to be a part of your presentation, but I didn't.
I figured you had it, so I didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me, okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Now, the amount of paperwork you submitted is probably the largest I've ever seen for any single group. I mean, it's an awful lot of pages of stuff. But I noticed in your incorporation, your original incorporation notice, you're incorporated under this name Life Sports Ministries International.
That's correct.
And it calls you a Christian organization. And on your IRS statement, it actually states that contributions to your organization are tax deductible. Is that something?
We're a 501c3. That's it. We're not a religious organization. We're not considered that. We are just a 501c3 nonprofit organization.
Okay, the IRS form that you submitted said that you were a Form 170 -A-B-3.
Termination letter you're talking about?
Yeah, right, the termination letter. By the way, guys, Steve Monk is a licensed tax preparer, and I know that because he used to do my taxes.
That's right.
Did the Malloy's taxes for many years. And so, I know Steve, I know when I ask Steve the question, he really knows, the legal side of the answer as well as what he did.
Most of the time.
Yeah, well, because you did it, so. I'd never seen an application from an organization that IRS, named as a religious organization, and submitted paperwork as a religious organization, because the organizations that we see are all nonprofits based on, providing service to kids. Mm-hmm. And so, that was something I hadn't seen before. And also in my personal history is being an administrator for both a Christian church and a Jewish Reformed temple. And I know that one of the absolute biggest no-nos about being in that business is for anyone to contribute money and get services or goods in return. And it looks to me like that's absolutely the business you're in, is people pay registration fees and their kids get trained.
Yeah, they get that, but they don't get to deduct it.
So that IRS designation is inaccurate, or has it been
It's only
changed?
for contributions or donations. That's it, not registration fees.
Okay. So, yeah, because registration fees are 171,000 of your 196,000 revenue in the last period. I also noticed on your form that under administration was the name Compass Point, which is, I know, is the company that you do taxes with. Are those administration expenses all Compass Point?
Yes, they are.
They are. Okay. And the paid staff of trainers of 105,580, I'm not going to ask you to tell me how much that is because it's none of our business, but there's 3 members of the Maka family that are amongst the paid trainers staff.
They're amongst the paid,
Right.
yes.
Okay. And the professional services of 24,142, is that the sort of things that Bob was talking about, lining fields and fixing sprinklers, or, that sort of, is that something separate, or is that also a part of the overhead of the organization?
That is part of the overhead of the organization, that we hire people to take care of the fields, we hire, plumbers to come on.
Okay, all right. That's all the questions I had.
Okay.
That's all the questions I had on that.
I want to make something, a
yeah,
clarification, though.
yeah.
None of our directors get paid, okay? Directors get paid, like myself, I get paid for doing coaching and the administration work, and that's it. That's Compass Point, okay? None of the directors get paid. All right, anything else?
You're not a director?
No, I'm a director, but I don't get paid director fees.
Oh, you get paid to be a coach
That's right,
and to administrate the, okay.
that's right,
Okay.
okay?
In reading your bylaws, it does say that the salaries of the officers shall be fixed from time to time by resolution of the Board of Directors. It also states that directors serving the organization in any other capacity, such as staff, are allowed to receive compensation, therefore.
Yeah, and it's disclosed on the 990.
Right, okay. All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for him? Okay. Comments from the board? This item was put on the agenda based on a request from Director Dransfeld and Director Roberts, so I'd like to hear you support the motion.
Can we request some information from staff as well in regards to a
Oh,
couple of
okay.
items for clarification?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Director, I couldn't understand what you were saying.
He's asking for clarification.
Yes, I'd like
from the
to-
staff about the difference between reserved hours and played hours. And,
Right.
having been in the youth sports business for many years, I know that there can't be, because the staff doesn't know whether people are actually out there or not.
Right, but, it is an important distinction to make between reserved hours versus actually played if we're talking about usage hours. So if you'd explain a little bit about the difference between the usage versus reservation hours, and does the district track the teams and the number of teams, the quantity, and essentially what the difference between reservation versus usage is?
Yeah, no, good question. Chairman Malloy, members of the board, if I may.
Yes.
No, you've kind of hit the nail on the head. So the number of hours that we presented tonight were the number of hours reserved by the groups. This comes through our FFAU, our field facility allocation and use that we do twice a year. We meet with the CSOs, provide them with, if you will, a bunch of items that they need to provide to the district, as well as a reservation of each of the facilities that they're going to be using for that period of time. Our FFAU starts from January 1st through June 30th, and then again from July 1st to December 31st. So they are to put down any and all reservation hours that they're going to be using for both fields or facilities for meetings. So the numbers that we tracked and that we recorded tonight were the number of hours that are reserved at the fields. It's not necessarily the hours used. over a period of time, the groups have gotten better as far as narrowing down their hours. And again, maybe that comes from 20 years of experience of knowing who's going to use what. If you kind of recalled on the PV East hours, the first couple of years you saw over 1,000 hours. Over the last couple of years, you're seeing them in the 700 range. An example of this is that, it occurred to this recreation supervisor, that there aren't lights. So why are we reserving the fields until 9 p.m.? The same thing, baseball or girls softball. If there's a field that doesn't have lights, I know they're not going to use it till 9 p.m. We don't live in the land of the midnight sun, so we're not able to use it that far. And so again, through some corrections, I've gotten the organizations to scale back some of the reservations. But again, it is just those hours that they have reserved, not necessarily used. And we don't have a way of tracking who's using what. And it could be, and we're not sure if we're looking at 10 teams that are practicing till 9 o'clock at night, or is it one team practicing until 9 o'clock at night?
Thank you for the clarification on that. And if they, as you narrow it down and let's say the reservations, it's clear that, let's say, a day is only being used for a half day. Do the organizations come to you and say, we're not using the fields during this day and time because we're out of state, we're out of county, we have a tournament in Temecula or something like that?
I'm sorry, I'm not totally following your question.
I'm just asking, because if it's not reserved, or if it's reserved but it's not being utilized, what is the district informed of that?
We're sometimes informed of it, but we're also, and this is me going out to the field and noticing that if a field or a complex is being reserved until 6 o'clock, from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. each and every weekend. But I go out and I'm only seeing one of those fields out of 5, 4, whatever it is, being utilized. We've asked, those questions, and it might be, well, we might need it. Or it was at the beginning of the season, when we're taking registration, we're trying to get those kinds of answers. So, but I have let the CSOs know that, in fact, hey, look, you're not utilizing all your hours. What's going on? Do I need to peel them back? So, and it's just trying to work with them.
Appreciate that. And I know it's, obviously we don't necessarily think we need to be sending you out to the fields to check on people or anything like that. I mean, obviously there's better ways to conduct business and use your time. I was just kind of wondering about that process. So thanks for clarifying that part for me. Additionally, I'm hoping that, further on down in the agenda today, it was item one of the other many items that we have to address tonight. We have a new sports RMS system that is being proposed, and I would hope that there'd be some functionalities there to monitor usage versus reservation times, because obviously if you have something reserved, like you said, you don't know if there's 4 teams out there, if there's 8 teams out there, and the actual usage of 4 versus 8 teams on a specific field is obviously puts a lot more wear and tear on the fields than just one team. So I think that is the only question I had with regards to reservation versus usage. Thank you.
I have one question. What are the consequences if a CSO goes below 75% in resident registration?
There are no consequences.
They don't get pulled as a CSO or anything? No. Okay. Why is that requirement there if there's no consequences?
It's an old requirement that we had prior to 2004. At some point, it became that, I think it was during the Cougars presentation or something, that we did not keep up that policy. And so we've decided to just go with the application and the process that we're working through now.
And is there an actual policy set in place aside from the application? Is the application essentially the policy?
No, the application is just that. It's an application to become a CSO. but it's just that they require the documents, but there isn't a policy.
Okay. So there is no policy stating that CSOs are required,
Required,
that the district has to support CSOs.
I'm sorry, I'm not following your question.
Eric?
So if I'm understanding, there's probably two things. So in 2004, if you look in your packet, there was a policy statement. Anthony can probably attest to this better than anybody looking through all the records. If I go back to 2004, I can't find anything in the board records that say that there was any policy or that was actually accepted. That doesn't mean that it wasn't, I just can't find the records that state that. In 2008, when this application was brought about, there is discussion, and you can see in the minutes that says that there will not be any, that the 75% is no longer in effect. So as part of the application, I think at best it's a little at best it's messy. You've got the application process, but it doesn't walk through what those steps or what that looks like as far as a policy statement or a policy that has been approved for more specifics.
Okay. And with that, there was just no amendments or anything or a policy created to really clear all of it up?
That would be correct at this point.
Okay. And that's since 2008, correct?
That would be correct. The only thing that has passed since 2008, along with the 2008, there was the application, and there was actually a 2-page form in which the CSOs had to collect all the information. In 2017, the board did approve. It's about a 10-page document, and that document actually goes through what all the CSOs have to do. So, like I said, that 10-page document is for all CSOs. It's a 2-year agreement with an annual update. So most of those will be coming due here in the next September-ish. And then it has all the information regarding insurance, legality. So there's been laws changed regarding concussion training and all of those things. So all of that information is in that specific document.
Yes, I reviewed that document. Is there any, so how can a CSO lose status, if at all?
There's no real process for that either. If they lose status, it would be when the board agrees to the 2-year agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Let me provide a point of information here on that 2004 policy statement on community service groups. The first sentence reads, organizations which provide community recreation program which might otherwise be provided by the district will be considered for community service group status. So there is a policy, and the policy says that if you're an organization that'll do something for the community that we might have to do, then we'll consider you for status. That's the whole purpose of this process. Okay. Yeah, there is a policy, it's just, yeah. Director.
I don't know who this is to, other than staff, maybe the general manager. The allocation of fields rental by zone, does that have to do with the lights? I mean, I understand what the lighting situation is out there, but is that due to the lights that we only reserve by zone? So if somebody wants a practice field, they have to get the whole zone?
Yeah, and there's actually another part too. So when we built PV fields in 2010, yes, it is by light zone, but it's also by how we put it into ActiveNet. So we don't recognize a soccer field. And you can put however many soccer fields into a zone, or if you're going large-sided, you can put about a field and a half. And again, this kind of goes back to the fee schedule, ActiveNet, the light zones, and how we would be able to monitor that or track it.
That's what I thought, Lanny. Thank you. I was here then, and I do remember that, the whole thing, but thank you for explaining how that works, because it's not just lights. It has to do with ActiveNet and other things too. So, okay, thank you.
Let me just touch on that. I recall the meetings that we discussed this. I was there also. And what happened was there was some discussion back and forth about allowing individual light standards to be clicked on. And I was an advocate for that because I foresaw the whole zone thing coming. But at the end of the day, it was decided that they would do it the way that they did it, probably because it was a lot cheaper.
Yeah, we also have a limitation in the amount of lights that we can have on it at one time. One of the unfortunate things I learned about electricity in the Edison company when my church put solar panels in is there actually is a component in your bill when you're a large user for demand charges. And my little church was getting hit for $300 a month demand charge because more than 3 times a year for 15 minutes, we exceeded 10 kilowatt hours of demand. That's like, when the ladies were running the stoves in the kitchen and 4 air conditioners were running and all the lights were on and we exceeded. So we ended up with this demand charge. Well, when you're the size of the sports park and you go over, it's $5,000 a month penalty for demand charge. And once you go over it, you pay it for the whole year. So we have to be really careful about how many lights are turned on at any one time and keep the demand under the 5,000 kilowatt hour. So it's even more complicated.
Yeah, no, I remember the conversation, so.
Yeah. Electricity for lights is big, although since that time we've applied and received status for a special rate for sports field lighting. It's a lot cheaper. So. Okay. Director Dransville. Oh. Well, we're each going to give we've been on this topic for an hour and a half, so now's the time where state your case for which way you want to go on this, and then we'll have a vote and we'll move on. So, yeah.
There we go. All right. I did bring this up to be agendized. One of the things I really believe in is transparency. It concerns me that the previous application, and I'm not sure what the status was, if the board was aware that MSA was not approved. I now thank you, Director Malloy, for bringing up this policy. I think one of the concerns that I have overall is having clear policies that basically state what can and cannot happen. It has been a mystery. It seems as though, and it's very difficult to get a clear answer about how to become a community service organization. And the thing that I heard the most was you have to ask a board member. And, any organization, if they weren't aware of whatever that process was or didn't have access to a board member in the sense of knowing someone or someone that would even tell them that, I found it very frustrating. We are a community. We should be able to serve everyone. I am not talking about an open door policy. What I'm saying is we should at least allow people the opportunity to apply for it, take it into consideration without any personal conflicts. I understand that AYSO and Eagles have given a tremendous amount to the community. But as you heard tonight as well, MSA has given to the community. And the question that came up was, what has changed since the previous application? When you look at their records, you see that they've steadily been growing and stabilized in finances. So to me, that's a wonderful indicator that, they've been part of the community. They took, as mentioned, a spot that's an eyesore. They've been able to really help this community thrive. Why not reward that behavior? And I can understand other groups wanting to create community service organizations, as the example that that was brought up. But at the same time, it it's a process. And I think, you know, one of the things in the very beginning with MSA, from my understanding of the various oral history lessons I believe I've been given, is that they were deemed